black. And actually, funny thing, Kale, when I looked up I wanted to Google your background, and all these recipes came up for black kale.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've ever Googled for
I
kale.
have. You just scroll through pictures and pictures of kale.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, Kale is as a senior program coordinator at Burlington Green. He is an environmentalist and an advocate for our environment. He's a motivational speaker and an energy worker. He facilitates meditation groups. And is there anything I'm missing?
I feel like pretty much most things are encompassed within that. I think you got it.
Okay. And of course, yeah, and of course you also coordinate one of the biggest holistic in our area anyways, holistic fairs, I guess you would call it. Is that what you call it? Or events, which invites all kinds of interesting people to come and talk about what they do. Today, we were thinking that we would like to talk about meditation. So why don't we start with, Kale, just what does meditation do for you? Why are you so into it? What's the whole, how did it all start? Tell me a little bit.
Very good question. And I think you can, most people can probably tell from the list of different projects and things that I'm involved in that it can get, it just seems maybe like a little bit all over the place. And that's generally how my brain has worked since I was born, is I have just not ADHD, but like quite a intense attention sort of, I wouldn't even say issue, but it's just sort of how my brain is structured, is it's very like, and like easily stimulated. So meditation to me, like the way that I found it, was almost out of necessity, because if I didn't have some sort of practice that allowed me to and just like still all of that activity, I have been in that state where it's just, and you just spin, and you're not really doing things that are too productive or too deeply impactful, because it's so spread and scattered, I'd say is a good way to put it. So for my own mental health and emotional health and physical health, meditation was something I sought out.
And like, when did you find this? Were you a kid when you started?
Yeah, I wish. I wish. I had, so it was probably, I was always interested in like spirituality, I would say. And then funny enough, it was actually like Sylvia Brown. I don't know if you know who that is, on Montel Williams. That was my first like, oh, like what's that? What's going on over this? So my high school girlfriend and I, like every Wednesday, we would go and watch Montel Williams, and then I started reading her books. And revisiting them is a much different experience than my first sort of foray into absorbing the knowledge. But that was my first sort of interest and portal into spirituality, which obviously meditation is mentioned quite a lot in most spiritual teachings. And then I tried on my own for quite some time through like guided meditations and things on YouTube and like CDs, and Sylvia Brown sometimes in some of her books it would come with like a guided meditation, and I just found personally I could never really get very deep into any of them. And what I've discovered sort of further along on the path is like guided meditations didn't really seem very good for me, because it was a lot of like visualization, like now you're in front of a waterfall and now there's a yellow light and it's coming in here, and it to me it just made my brain more active, because I'm like, well, how close is the waterfall? How tall is the waterfall? Like how like and it just it wasn't calming for me. And it wasn't until I started going to like in person group meditation. So at that time, I actually had what I would consider was like a pretty rough and traumatic breakup, and I was like quite just emotionally, I would say, damaged and quite like dry and drained as a person. At the end of it, it was like a 3.5-year relationship that just ended very badly. So again, out of necessity, I was like, I need community, I need help in this meditation practice, because I'm really not getting it on my own. Despite my best efforts. So that's when I found Luminous Energetic Pathways Sacred Center, which is located here in Burlington, Ontario. and a beautiful synchronicity path on how I was able to be led to that, but that's like a different story for another day. And then I attended my first group meditations, and that was when I was really like, oh, okay. And I feel like one of the big difference for that was sound, because it was the singing bowls, it was drumming, it was the rain sticks, and I found that to be present in the space where those sounds were present, it almost, I compare it as like just silly product placement is, you know those commercials where they say like a drop of dawn, and then they have like all the oil on the surface of the water, and then they put the one drop and just goes. That's what it felt like with the sound and my thoughts. So it was very difficult for me to maintain any momentum of thinking with the drumming or with the singing bowl, which is very all-encompassing in your mind. And it gave me the first opportunity for like that sound to take up most of the space in my awareness and allow me to just keep my focus on my breath. And it's almost like the sound was keeping the space open so that I could just stay and focus on my breath. And then, like most people know for meditation, it's your breath that generally, almost all the time, like leads you into that space of stillness and yourself. So that's when I had my first big, like, oh, like I was really getting it. Yeah.
I think it's so interesting because really meditation, I mean, there's all different types. I've taught many different types, and there's no one type that resonates with everyone. Everybody is an individual.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll like when we do restorative yoga or when we do, some kind of spiritual kind of event, we'll have music on, and some people say, I hate the music. Like,
Mm-hmm.
distracting, don't put the music on, and it's often just sounds, like you say, the bowls or something, and then other people are like, oh my gosh, I love the music, I can't, like, this is it for me. Me personally, I love kirtan, I love the music. I can get absorbed in it. I'm kind of like you. I also have a busy mind. I have tried meditation for I've been doing yoga for over 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
Teaching yoga for over 25 years, so doing yoga longer. And, I could never get a really solid practice in. Like, I would go in fits and starts. Like, I'd be good for a while, practicing every day, and then, the next month, I wouldn't even practice,
Mm-hmm.
So, are you consistent now? Are you?
Yeah, good question. Very good question. And I would say still, so I've been doing the group meditation facilitation for about 3 years, like about 3.5 years now, and meditating like regularly since about 2014. So like my personal meditation practice has been like a bit over 7 years, and then professionally, like facilitating it for others for over 3. But I still feel like
up on me sometimes or so.
Oh, okay. So yeah, 7+ years for my own personal practice, 3+ years for facilitation, and I still feel like a student. And I remember you saying of one of our first conversations that you were saying as a yoga teacher that like the first 10 years you should be like paying your students, and then after that like they start to pay you. I'm sure I butchered that sort of analogy, but that's always stayed with me.
Oh,
Um,
wow, cool. Yeah.
yeah, and it's so valid and important, and I think very important to stay humble as any sort of facilitator or leader, and to always look at myself as a student. Um, so I'm still working on the consistency of the practice, and I actually find that generally very relieving for people when I talk to them, because they're thinking like, oh, I need to do it every single day, like militantly, and they feel so disappointed with themselves if they don't have that consistency of their practice. And I just like to be very transparent and say like, yeah, I'm still working on that too. There's sometimes for like a week or like, cause I would do bi-weekly meditation circles. Like there would be a full week I don't meditate at all. And not to say I'm not engaged in other mindfulness practices, but the actual sitting down for it. So I still have a ways to go, certainly. But I try and think about just my growth and where I've come from and where I'm at today, and how much the time I spend in the meditative practice really boosts and enhances literally every single other aspect of my life. And I know Deepak Chopra says, which I always think is so hilarious, he says, like, everybody should be meditating for 20 minutes a day. And if you think that you don't have 20 minutes a day, you should be meditating twice for 20 minutes a day, which I think is hilarious because meditation creates space. It doesn't take up time and space. It like hugely increases the efficiency, the productivity, and just your general ability to enjoy your life because you're more present for it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that, well, I think I've told this to people before as well, and I don't think I would be the person I am today. I don't think I would have been able to do what I've done. I probably would have ended up, in some medical facility of some sort, if I hadn't found yoga and then consequently everything that went with it. And when I first started yoga, I didn't even really understand the meditative aspect of even the yoga itself. I mean, that's something that as you develop in the practice. But then taking meditation separately, recently I've discovered the 6-phase meditation, and it's really held my attention because it incorporates the gratefulness, forgiveness, outside, bring in outside source, and so it's kind of got components of things. But what can you tell people who are listening to this? So you mentioned meditation versus mindfulness. So how do you see the difference?
I guess that's a good question. I wouldn't necessarily say versus, but I see meditation as like almost like a ritual, where it's like I have a practice where I have like my meditation cushion, I have my little space that I meditate, but not to say I couldn't sit down outside right now or sit here right now while we're together and meditate, but I find it's a more like active and engaged process where I'm doing nothing else. And I have the space of just stillness, attention to breath, and like nothing. My intention is to melt away completely, to have the personality disappear, and to just have the awareness of my breath and allow me to sink as deep into myself as possible. Where mindfulness is almost like a carry through of that practice, like the meditation builds my capacity for awareness, and then the mindfulness is how I apply it to the rest of my life. So like when I'm having a conversation with my family, or when I'm making a decision, or being aware of my reactions and my initial impulses or emotions. So like being able to be aware when I go from like a peace state to like jealousy, or to a frustration. And then the mindfulness aspect, I feel like, is an important application, because then it's like consciously unwinding the layers. So like, what is that jealousy? Like, and most people we're trained sort of through our society. We just go through the motions and we just react, and we just like carry through without digging as to what those motivations behind them are. So we're acting very unconsciously, where if I go down to the jealousy, like eventually it comes down to like self-confidence and self-love. Because if you're feeling fully confident and loved, there's no need for jealousy or competition. So I would say the mindfulness is just awareness. I'd say they're very similar sort of words. And then being able to examine as neutrally as possible my own behaviors, my own responses, my own patterns. And then I love this phrase, and I heard it from a keynote named Matt Todd many, many years ago. And he says, awareness creates choice, and choice creates change. So I just love that sort of link, that if you don't have the awareness, which you're able to build through a meditative practice, it's almost like you don't have a choice, because you're just going through the patterns that you've absorbed from your family, from society, from the media. And once you're aware of it, maybe your impulse to buy a product, then you can sit with it, and it's like, why do I feel so like I need this right now? What is this going to do for me that I don't already have? And it gives you the opportunity for choice, which is to say, like, I can have that feeling that this product, I perceived this product was going to give me without the product. And then that results in change, because then you're able to change your behaviors and your impulses, and we're able to change society on a more cumulative scale, because the fewer of us that are plugged into that sort of react, respond, automation system, the easier it will be to create a world that's based on different values than like consumerism, if that seemed like a little journey there, but I hope that made sense.
You packed in so much there, and it was so good because there's so many things. Like, really what you're talking about is emotional intelligence. And I think it's like, kudos to you. Like, obviously, like, you're still young, and it takes some people years and years to come up with what you just said, like, to understand that, like, how we behave, how reactive, you know, we call it, I talk about in my class about being unruffable. Like, not every little thing should throw us off balance, goes into the, and it, you know, I mean, I'm much older than you. It's taken a lot of time for me to, and you know, it's interesting too, because when you break it up, you can maybe be unruffable with the general public or with strangers, but when your own family and your own relationships, that's when it really, you know, because during COVID, we're stuck with people, and we're like we're realizing, I wrote a blog about it, like, how do you get along with your people that you're living with every day? Because and the more you, and so the other thing, so I'm so excited about what you just said, because everything you said was amazing, but also, but one other thing is fear, right? Like, when you break it down, what are people afraid of, right? They're afraid that somebody doesn't love them. They're afraid that, because their own self-worth isn't strong enough, so fear takes over. And so that's another thing. I just feel like what you're saying is in there as well. And then and the whole self-love, you know, I say to people, it's funny, like, sometimes when I do public speaking, I say, you know, I might be talking about nutrition, I might be talking about whatever, but in the final analysis, I said, like, if you're going to follow somebody, if you're going to go to a meditation class, make sure, or a yoga class, make sure that you're going to somebody who is all about love and compassion, because otherwise you're in the wrong place, you know? And I think that's a hard thing for people to find in today's world, you know, because not everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's our purpose really in life, is to spread love and compassion. And
I think you hit the nail right on the head there, because it covers everything. Like, if you're going to be learning from anyone, that's like the perfect sort of like resume that you're looking for, is, do you exude, do they live, do they radiate love and compassion? Because to me, like, no matter what religion, no matter what belief system, unless you have that, you're not doing it right. And no offense, that's my own judgment and perception for it, but that to me is the goal of every religion, of every, like, the real true nugget and seed there. So, and you can find it as, like, that is, I feel like every religion, every belief system has a path into that, like, nugget. But if that isn't the goal, if that isn't the end point, then, like, I'm not interested in following that path.
It's got to be the overall message. You know, there can be other messages involved, but that's got to be the overall message. And I think the other thing I just want to say too is, like, I asked you that question about consistency because, you know, I think it's really important as teachers of, you know, yoga, meditation, whatever, that we are walking the walk, but we also have to let our students know that we're not perfect and that we fall off the wagon. And so a lot of times, like, when, you know, I might be going along really nice, and then all of a sudden I like, it just seems like nothing's going right. And then I look back and I go, oh yeah, but I stopped meditating, and I stopped my spiritual practice, and I haven't been hanging out with the same people anymore, you know, because these people help ground me, you know, and I haven't been working on my relationships. And then I go back and I do that, and then all of a sudden everything is cheery and beautiful again. And so being vulnerable, I think, is really important, and letting your students know that there's no perfect practice. There's no perfect, there's no perfect practice, and it's a journey, a real journey. So here's another question. How do you motivate people to take that journey? How are you motivating people to get into what we're talking about, to this world of love? Is there a way, or do they just have to come to it?
It's a very, very good question. The first, like, sort of my first feeling and insight behind it is that, like, motivating is almost, it can be, like, counterproductive almost. Like, if someone's not ready to hear it and to approach and to take part in it. So one of the things I do is, like, I'll send out my invites for meditation. I'll send out my invites for stuff. I don't chase anyone. I don't chase anyone. Because if I have to send you a message to remind you to like do something, are you doing it because you're trying to make me happy, or you want me to think higher of you, or are you doing it because you want to get something out of the class? So I love and appreciate when I ask like around the circle, like what brought you here? And people are like, oh, I really want to support Kale. I'm like, well, that's nice. But like, if that's the only reason you're here, then that's not actually, like, that's not what this is about. Like we can go out for coffee. Like you don't have to come to my classes for that. And I appreciate it because they do get value from it. But one of the things I love, and it's a Paulo Coelho quote, and I've heard it a few different times, but this is the best way I've heard it sort of put, is he says that the world responds to your example, not your opinion. And I find that so poignant because
I wrote that quote down.
it's so good. It's so good.
I wrote that quote down because you.
It's everything. It just encompasses everything, because if you're not radiating it as an example, who cares what you're talking about? Right?
Yeah, exactly. So then you also talked earlier about how it transfers over into your life. So can you tell people specifically how you feel meditation and being more mindful, like has it affected how it's affected you physically, mentally? What exactly?
I'll go through sort of that thing physically, mentally, emotionally. Physically, I'd say one, just it's like, I don't know if it's like a symptom of sort of like stress or overwhelm, is I used to just be very sweaty. Like anytime I was anxious or uncomfortable or I felt pressure, like immediately, boom, my hand, like I would just start to sweat. And I've noticed a lot through the mindfulness, because what it was is it was just a lot of chaos, I think, internally that wasn't processed. So as I've become more like confident and still, like my body is just generally a lot more calm, which is just like obviously lovely as all humans, like we have to live inside of this body. So as calm and still as we can make it, the better. Like mentally, I would say my mind, it's just a lot easier to like calm. And I have those sorts of tools at my, not disposal, but at my, they're available to me. So one example I shared recently with a friend, and it was before sort of like a big event in my life, and I haven't had what I would consider to be like a panic attack that I've heard. I have friends with extreme anxiety. My little sister has an extreme panic and anxiety disorder, and like you get hospitalized for these intense panic attacks. But I had what felt like similar to the symptoms or the effects that I've heard people describe. And what I was able to do is I feel like it's a huge overwhelm of energy where like I can't think straight, my body is reacting, I'm anxious, I'm nervous, it's affecting my digestion, it's in multi different layers. But what I was able to do, because I have like a little bit of grounds in a mindful practice, and then as an energy worker as well, I'm a little bit more sensitive to like the energy and where it's sitting in my body. And then I have different tools. So whether it's like my breath, whether it's like laying on the earth, whether it's using crystals, whether it's using my own energy in my hands to clear it, I could feel like, oh, okay, so like my first wave is it was like right here, sitting in my chest, and I could feel this like of energy. And then the process was like, okay, so I'm gonna like lay my hands on it. I'm gonna say like a few prayers. I'm gonna put like a crystal on it, and I'm gonna like breathe this energy out until this energy center settles. And then I can feel the next most prominent, which was like up here. And then I'm gonna work on this energy center, and then it went down to my sacral chakra. So it was like this process of release of this excess of energy that was in my body, using those tools. And I'd say primarily the breath is the most important, just like focusing the intention and then being able to breathe it out. And to be honest, it was like several hours. And what was very like interesting is like everything else was cleared from my day, just like magically, in order for me to have this sort of process. So the mindfulness is being able to really tune into like what's going on in my body and like what's going on in my mind, and being able to like almost coach.
I don't know why you're sounding funny here.
Oh, I apologize. Is this a little bit better? A, B, C, D.
Okay.
It shows fine on mine.
Sorry, you kind of broke up a little bit there.
Oh, yeah, no worries. Where did I break up?
And your face is and your face is.
I can
I
continue.
don't know why you're frozen now. You're kind of.
Hi, I can still hear you.
Now you're back.
Okay.
So you're kind of.
Where did I leave off?
Yeah, I think we lost you there. So like, okay, so yeah, I think that you're saying about that the breath is a big part of it. We got to this part where we got out there, and then the breath and awareness, and then the last little part kind of cut out. But yeah, I totally believe that the breath is so very, very, very important. Obviously, I teach a lot of pranayama and yoga, and I went to a big workshop down in Seattle a couple years ago, and it totally changed my life, and because of the whole breath work. That was a whole week of pranayama and meditation, and I wish everybody could go through that experience, because I think so many of us, I mean, and I've been teaching for 25 years. I've been teaching pranayama. I knew the importance of it, but it's one thing to know something, but it's another thing when you really experience it at a really intense level. And so, it was the breath is so important. I think people just totally undervalue it 100%.
Yeah, it's probably like the number one skill.
Seminars, yeah, like I'll do a seminar and I'll say meditation and all these things, and people will come, but when I say, okay, we're doing something on breath work, I get really low attendance. Like, it's just like, so I can't even call it breath work anymore. People just don't get it. Like, we're taking in the oxygen, excellent, our immune system, everything that we're going through right now with COVID. I mean, the breath and our immune system is so important. And so I wish people would recognize that more and realize how the breath totally affects your body. And I've been through some pretty, harrowing situations. And if I didn't have that ability to calm my breath and to focus on that, I just think I would have been lost. And, it's just like even pain management, for example.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, and also you made a comment about tools, and I also feel that, like I say that to my students all the time. I have trained you. You have tools in your box to use when things go wrong. And also you have people, like, you have me, you have other people who you can get help from. I think that's so important, that people have their own sort of group of people that they can go to, and like energy workers and massage if they need, and osteopaths and all those kind of things to help them. But in the final end, we have to help ourselves. But let me ask you this too. So how do you see that, because this is my big thing right now, is do you see what you eat and your nutrition as being a big part of what's going on in your brain?
1000%. And I don't know if I would articulate it as much as like my understanding on like my brain and my brain function specifically, but one of the things that's been the most prevalent to me and comes through in like my meditations and my journaling is like literally the basics, like food, water, air, like the clarity and the importance of those building blocks are like incredibly and infinitely more important than our society makes them, and that we're trained to sort of understand them. But like the quality of the food we're eating, the cleanliness of it, the amount of like chemicals and the purity of it, it hugely affects everything in our lives, from like our bodies, our minds, our souls, because food, like chemically, obviously makes up our physical body, but then also energetically, like what's the energy that food is carrying, and what's the processes it has been through, because you're also integrating that energy, not just the nutrients.
Yeah, 100%. And I really believe that we would not be having so many people having these temper tantrums, or whatever you want to call them, experiences of rage, if it wasn't for poor food choices. And I really feel that food, it's actually my next book. My first book that I wrote was about food and cancer, but this next one is actually about the brain and how food affects our mood. And like, if everybody's walking around like, like there's no homeostasis, like everybody's being up and down with their blood sugar, and and their brains are just being destroyed by chemicals and bad stuff out there.
Yeah,
so,
I would say it's like a process of like the process of unwinding and deprogramming you can apply to almost anything. And I would say for food, the same thing with like our thoughts and the things that we consume is like, as I've slowly gotten off of sugar, it's like I don't have the tolerance for it anymore. Like I'm drinking iced tea right now that has, yeah, I don't know how to fix that. Yeah, there's nothing else I can really shut off.
Yeah. Sometimes this happens on Zoom calls, so like I you know, you're coming in a cloth clear enough that we can get, but yeah, sugar is a huge factor for sure, and people just don't even understand the significance of sugar. Okay, just let me break another thing down here. So
Yeah.
we talk energy healing. Tell me a little bit about what you do in energy healing.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say like I happened upon it, but it definitely just sort of fell into my path. When I started going to like the meditation circles and the community events, there was quite a lot of people that were involved in and teaching energy work. And my first experiences were in receiving energy work. And then I feel like when you have an impactful experience that you can really tangibly feel and see the benefits from, it really opens up that space in your brain. Because depending on who you're talking to, like it can sound very kooky that like, oh, I'm gonna like put my hands here and I'm gonna breathe out like the excess energy in your chest. Like, I know at certain points in my life I would have like rolled my eyes at that. But the more tangible experiences you can have with it. And I find that like science is really catching up to the understanding of it, that our emotions have energy, our thoughts have energy, and depending on the repetitive thoughts and the repetitive emotions, if we don't have, like you said, like emotional intelligence or the ability to process them in any sort of healthy way, they stick in your body in certain areas, and they can cause all sorts of different just issues in your body with congestion and energy flow. And we do know that like literally everything in the cosmos is made up of energy. So like our bodies are energy. And basically I would say energy work is like you develop this sensitivity as a person to be able to feel sort of where the excesses of energy are, where there maybe is like a little bit of like a suckage or draining feeling where like it needs to be topped up. And I would say what's very important that is occasionally missing in energy work sessions is, yes, we're going to ease the congestion, we're going to make sure that the energy is flowing, but then the person needs like skills and like you said, tools in order to,
Yes.
they're just going to go back out to their life and then they're going to get back to that point that they were when they came to see you, and then they're going to need you to do it again for them. And I don't see that as very sustainable. And I try not to think about any of the work I do as like a business, because I don't want like a person to come and see me inevitably. That just means I'm not doing my job correctly. So to help someone achieve balance and homeostasis in an energy sort of way, and then to help either provide them with resources or different teachers or practices that can help them to sustainably manage that themselves, is the ideal. Yeah, because there's just so much work that needs to be done on our planet that I would much rather, just like I was having a like panic sort of issue and I had the tools to process that myself. That's the goal and intention, is to give people the tools to be able to do that. Because if you feel that tightness in your chest, like what does that mean? Like how do you tune into that and listen to yourself? Because I believe that like our emotions and generally a lot of the sensations that we have in our body are signals and communications from ourselves to our conscious minds that without a mindfulness practice, we don't often listen to them until the whispers become a scream. And then it becomes...
Okay, so we kind of, you're blocking out again. So when you come back, I'll just have you repeat that last statement over again.
Yeah, where did it end up?
You're just stuck here a bit. Crazy.
Tell me when I'm moving again.
Sometimes.
Am I good?
Okay.
Oh, we're
We're
back.
back there. We kind of like, it went gray for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're back.
We're back.
Okay.
With technical difficulties.
So, yeah,
So where did I leave off there,
I don't know.
Susanne?
Are you in a basement?
No, I'm on the main floor.
So, you are, okay. I think, I knew where you left off, and then I kind of forgot now. But yeah, I don't know. You were somewhere around, like you're saying, giving the tools, and then I think you made a statement about was it about giving the tools and then knowing that you have to teach them where they're stuck and what that means. And then I think there was something about awareness in there, but yeah, I think that was
I think also like sustainability in our approach and knowing that like we're not doing this, I would hope as an energy worker for like regular customers or like you have to sign up for 6 sessions or something like that.
We lost you again.
Oh, Lord. So it's saying on mine that your network bandwidth is low.
We're losing you again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe that's what's happening. Okay, so let's see if we can get you back here. And that's strange. Okay, so well, I feel, Kale, that we've covered a lot of things today, and I'm thinking that there's still, you know, we haven't talked about the world at large and what's happening, you know, in the world, current events and that type of thing. But I'm wondering if we should leave that for our next talk, and
I think that would be nice.
and this one today, just because, and see if maybe next time, maybe I need to wear my my headpiece or something. You know,
I think even if you were open to it, we could do like.
Why don't we do that?
Yeah, I think also. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I would think also if you'd be open to it, we could do like a little socially distant recording, and just like have it actually record us, like maybe 6 feet apart, and then that way we don't need the internet.
Yes, I started that way, doing these interviews that way, and then this whole thing happened, and so then I've been with Zoom. And overall, it's been working pretty well. But sometimes we do run into this thing. But let's leave it today, and then let's bring that back for a conversation next time. So where do people reach you, Kale? That's the other thing. Just give me, like, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, good question. So you can find me, probably the most content is on my.
Oh,
hey.
Technology is frustrating.
Isn't it? And I'm about to give more technology updates. So the best place probably is on Facebook, and it's just facebook.com/KaleBlack.
Still kind of stuck here, so. Okay. Yeah, we're really bumming out here with this sound. Okay, so the way to get a hold of Kale is www.facebook.com. Where do I get that message back, Kale? How do I get that message back?
Ooh, I don't know.
So he's on Instagram.com, KaleBlack27. Okay, there we go. And he's on Facebook. I'm sure you can look him up. And if you Google him, aside from the recipes, you will see that his profile, because he's totally involved with Burlington Green. So thank you, Kale, for your time.
And my pleasure.
Yeah, it was great talking to you, and love talking about meditation. I think we have so much in common. We could probably talk for hours. So we'll do this again, and let's book a socially distant interview of some sort for sure. So Beautiful. Thank you, and I'm gonna. and end the recording right now, but stay online, and I'll just say goodbye to you in a sec. Just let me end the recording.